I've always hated not knowing the answer. It bothers me to not know the response to a question. It annoys me to be left at a cliffhanger. I get frustrated when people pique my interest and then say, "Never mind." I even twitched in annoyance that one time Rose Pedersen refused to finish the pattern she was doodling to close the loop. I hated not being able to resolve my own problems, hated uncertainties, hated leaving things to chance, and reveled in control. My mother joked that I must have OCD or something. I stayed up all night to research about it online, and I was sure that she was 94.7% correct. Trust me, I calculated that probability twice. When I first heard about Schrödinger's cat, a thought experiment devised to imply that someone could exist in a dualistic state, simultaneously alive and dead, as a particle or part of a wave function, I was entirely skeptic. My first thought was something along the lines of, so open the fucking box and find out. Niels Bohr would have been proud of me. But opening the box isn't always so easy to do. When I was 18, just a week after my high school graduation, my friends and I decided to get drunk on a night out. In our young, naive and stupid minds laced with misguided bravado, this seemed like the safest thing to us, in a city that never sleeps. We lived in the bright city of Hong Kong then, and you couldn't find a spot to see the stars if you tried. Well, you could, up on the top of the mountains, but that was obviously not an option because some of us wore heels and dresses. Being inexperienced teenagers, it didn't take much for us to get hammered. We were in the mood to do daring, stupid things, and there were no shortage of ideas. It was exactly 1:37 AM. I checked my watch twice when I mentioned the construction site that was 15 minutes away from where I lived. That was during the time when the government decided that we didn't have enough housing, so buildings were popping up everywhere, especially in new territories where there was space. In our drunken minds, this sounded like the perfect place to lounge at in the dead of the night. Now, when I say construction site, I really meant a large dugout hole in the ground. They had only started for a few months, so all there was were machines, overturned ground, a few boxes of materials here and there, and metal pillars half punched into the ground. There were close to no lights, save for a few temporary flashing cones. Perfect for kids to mess around, share horror stories and the like. The chain fence fell away easily with industrial scissors I had brought with me. I had planned carefully prior to the night out, and brought tools for our drunken mishaps. We weren't exactly the compliant bunch. At 2:55 AM, after another 2 bottles of liquor shared between the 8 of us, even Roberts was dead to lay in one of the larger, empty toolboxes, half buried in the ground. Just big enough for an adult-sized teenager. Imagine a coffin, but slightly wider. Allow us to close the lid and put the locks on and stay there for 15 minutes. I had forgotten his reasoning then. Something to stroke his ego, I'm sure. I never did like his arrogance. It was only through mutual friendship that brought us to a civilish acquaintance. I never forgot about the times he made fun of me before that, though. He was the first bully I had. It was tiring to have to deal with his shit throughout the 3 years I've known him. Anyway, once Even was fully inside and the rusty lock secured, each of us rattled the lid to make sure it was closed. I inspected the box carefully, twice, just to make the ordeal more legit. Some of us started to bury the box with dirt, leaving only the lid visible on the ground. Anyone not paying attention would miss it. For the first 5 minutes, Even communicated with us in loud, drunken drawls and his barely conscious jokes. We jumped on the box, sat on it, joked back. By the 7-minute mark, even started to get sleepy in the dark. I was sure he was asleep by 8 minutes and 17 seconds. Jonas made a quip about how terrible it would be to wake up in a box like that with a hangover 51 seconds later. Now, all this would have been fine and dandy if we had opened the box at the 15-minute mark. But by the 12-minute mark, somehow a stray construction worker noticed the hole in the fence and came at us, swinging his flashlight and yelling expletives, threatening to call the police and the like. In our haste to get away from this muscly madman, we fled, without even. After that, we found it impossible to go back. The worker had obviously seen the mess we made and contacted more people who lingered there for the night. We were drunk and scared and paranoid, and on that night we decided we'd go back tomorrow to free even, because we couldn't possibly go to a policeman and tell them how we had broken into government property and locked our friend in a box. Jonas made another quip about how Even was really going to wake up with a hangover in a box, making us all laugh. But then, the next day, when we were sober enough from our hangovers to trudge over to the construction site, we were greeted with a sight of terror. They had poured liquid cement into the hole, and the wooden coffin Even had lain in was nowhere to be seen. We never did find out if Even made it out of there, not for sure. Nobody went back to open the box. Nobody could. For a short while, Even was a living or non-living example of Schrödinger's Conundrum. He could be alive, he could be dead. Nobody was content with not knowing, of course, but nobody dared to check either. Kyla was afraid for a long time that he was alive and would get his revenge. But after 2 weeks of nothingness, aside from the slowly yellowing missing person poster, even her undying speculations had to cease. Her worry was largely pointless. Do you know how long the average human can survive without air? According to the internet, 1 minute of no oxygen would leave some vague hope of survival. 3 minutes would lead to serious brain injury. 10 minutes without oxygen would render resuscitation highly unlikely. And 15 minutes, well, recovery would be virtually impossible. Trust me, I checked. Twice. I didn't remember things all that clearly the morning after the incident. It was all a blur with police questioning and officers taking our statement. I did remember feeling extremely tired though. The price for leaving nothing to chance, I suppose. Do you have any idea how hard it is to obtain the exact activity schedule of a construction